You're driving cross country, tanks hitting empty, GPS says there's a town ahead, population 3,000, one main street, American flags on every porch. Looks safe, right? But then you pull up the crime stats and realize this quiet little town has a murder rate higher than Detroit. And the locals, they're not waving, they're warning you to keep driving. We've been taught that danger lives in big cities, but what if the most violent places in America aren't loud, they're whisper quiet? What if the real danger zones are towns so small you've never heard their names? Towns where economic collapse met drug corridors, where police departments run on duct tape and prayer, and where violence doesn't make headlines because there's no one left to write them. We're counting down 10 tiny towns where the violent crime rate doesn't just beat the national average, it obliterates it, where gas stations close at dusk for survival reasons, and where one town's murder rate per capita makes national headlines look tame. Hit subscribe because knowing which exits to skip might just save your road trip. Let's break it down. Number 10. Bessemer, Alabama. In Bessemer, they used to forge steel. Now they're just forging police reports at a rate that would make a city clerk weep. Bessemer sits just southwest of Birmingham, tucked into the Rust Belt shadow of what used to be Alabama's industrial crown jewel. Population hovering around 26,000. On paper, it's a suburb. In practice, it's a case study in what happens when the factory shuts down, but the problems stay clocked in. Let's talk numbers before we talk feelings. Violent crime rate, approximately 1,790 per 100,000 residents. That's nearly 5 times the national average of 380. Your odds of being a victim of violent crime here? About 1 in 56. For context, that's worse than Memphis, worse than St. Louis, worse than cities people actually warn you about. Property crime sits at 4,850 per 100,000, meaning your chances of having something stolen, broken into, or vandalized are roughly 1 in 21. Median household income, $32,000. Poverty rate, 31%. Here's what the city won't put on a welcome sign. Bessemer has struggled with gang activity for decades, particularly in the western and southern neighborhoods. Drug trafficking routes run straight through town, funneling everything from meth to fentanyl up from the Gulf Coast corridor. And if you think I'm exaggerating, in March 2023, a shootout at a Bessemer apartment complex left 4 dead and 7 injured, one of the deadliest mass shootings in Alabama that year. The suspects? Still at large 6 months later. That's not a police failure, that's a resource crisis. A local posted this on a community Facebook group, lightly paraphrased. Don't stop for gas after dark unless you're already praying. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. You learn hypervigilance as a second language. You memorize which intersections to avoid, which gas stations have working cameras, and which streets go quiet for the wrong reasons. Financially? Sure, rent averages $750 a month. Cheap. But your car insurance will spike, your home security system isn't optional, and you'll burn gas driving to the good grocery store 3 towns over because the local one keeps getting robbed. Can we talk about Bessemer's roads for a second? These aren't potholes, they're archaeological dig sites. I swear one on 8th Avenue is so deep it has its own weather system. The city's had a $12 million road improvement plan on the books since 2017. We're in 2024, the roads got worse. Meanwhile, Bessemer has $12 generals, but exactly 0 functioning public parks. You can buy discount dish soap on every corner, but try finding a swing set that isn't held together with rust, hope, and what looks like dental floss. Dusk settling over cracked pavement, a gas station lot, mostly empty, one flickering neon sign that says open, but no cars, no movement, just you, your fuel gauge screaming, and that gut feeling that says keep the engine running. You glance at the door, bars on the windows, bulletproof glass at the counter. The cashier doesn't look up. You pump fast. You leave faster. And if you thought Bessemer's Dollar General economy was depressing, wait till you meet the next town where they literally stopped paying their own retirees. Number 9. Prichard, Alabama. Prichard is the kind of place where the city's finances collapsed so hard they couldn't afford to bury the metaphor. Prichard sits just north of Mobile, population around 19,000 that's been slowly bleeding for decades. Then the jobs left. Then the tax base evaporated. Then the city literally went bankrupt in 2009 and had to stop paying its own retirees their pensions. Yeah, this town is so broke it retired hope before it retired people. Violent crime rate, 1,454 25 per 100,000. That's nearly 4 times the national average. Your chance of being a victim of violent crime? 1 in 69. Property crime? 1 in 24. Median household income? $26,500. Poverty rate? 38%. Prichard's police force operates with a fraction of the officers needed for a city its size. In some years, they've had fewer than 30 officers covering the entire city. Response times stretch into double digits. Some residents have reported calling 911 and waiting over an hour, or getting no response at all. Here's a quote pulled from a local news forum, paraphrased for clarity. Nobody moves to Prichard. You're either born here or you got stuck. That's not cynicism, that's survival poetry. Prichard declared bankruptcy and then kept operating like a city on life support. Public services gutted. Parks abandoned. The rec center that used to run youth programs? Boarded up. Streets that once had parades? Now they've got potholes deep enough to swallow your suspension and your optimism.
Let's talk about the gas stations for a second. There are exactly 3 in Prichard that locals consider safe. And even then, safe means hasn't been robbed in the last 2 weeks. One station on Highway 45 has bulletproof glass so thick the cashier has to yell through a speaker. Another one closes at 6 p.m. Not because of business hours, because of business survival. And the third? It's technically open 24 hours, but after 9 p.m., you pay through a rotating carousel like you're making a hostage exchange. Twilight. Streets lined with houses that look lived in from the outside but feel abandoned from the inside. No kids playing, no porch lights, just drawn curtains and the hum of AC units working overtime. You see a gas station ahead. The sign says open 24 hours, but the lot's empty and there's a cop car parked sideways near the entrance. Not reassuring, concerning. You keep driving. Remember Bessemer's $12 Generals? Prichard couldn't even keep a Dollar Tree open. It closed in 2021 citing security concerns. When a dollar store gives up on your town, that's not economics, that's an obituary.
Number 8. East St. Louis, Illinois. East St. Louis is what happens when a city gets forgotten by everyone except the people who can't afford to leave. East St. Louis is technically a small city, not a town, but with a population under 20,000 and shrinking fast, it functions like a small town with big city problems and zero big city resources. It sits directly across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, Missouri, so close you can see the Gateway Arch from some streets, and yet it might as well be a different planet. Violent crime rate, 2,599 per 100,000 residents. That's not a typo. That's almost 7 times the national average. Your odds of being a victim of violent crime in East St. Louis, 1 in 38. Median household income, $24,000. Poverty rate, 43%. The city has been dubbed America's most dangerous city by multiple crime analysts over the last 2 decades. Shootings are so common they rarely make regional news unless someone famous dies. Case in point, in January 2024, East St. Louis PD arrested a suspect tied to a multi-state drug trafficking ring that had been operating out of abandoned houses on State Street for over 3 years. The bust revealed over $2 million in heroin and fentanyl. The kicker? Neighbors had been reporting suspicious activity to police since 2021. Nobody came. When federal agents finally showed up, they found 13 makeshift labs in empty buildings within a 4-block radius. 13. A resident once posted this, paraphrased from a neighborhood watch group. We don't call 911 anymore. By the time they show up, it's a chalk outline and a case number. That's not exaggeration, that's Tuesday. East St. Louis is a city that looks abandoned even when people still live there. Entire blocks of empty houses, buildings with windows boarded up, doors kicked in, graffiti marking territory like digital pins on a crime map. Can we talk about crossing the river for a second? You can drive from East St. Louis into downtown St. Louis in under 10 minutes. 10 minutes. One side has stadiums, restaurants, corporate offices. The other side has boarded up schools and gas stations with security cages. That's not geography, that's policy. That's decades of disinvestment disguised as inevitability. It's like looking at a before and after photo, except both photos were taken on the same day in the same metro area. You're at a gas station on State Street. It's 7:15 p.m., but the sun dropped like it had somewhere better to be. The lot's dark except for 2 flickering fluorescent lights buzzing like angry wasps. The pump smells like gasoline and regret. There's a sign taped to the cashier window. No bills over $20, no exceptions, no loitering. Police will be called. 3 cars in the lot, all idling, engines running, no drivers visible. The
door to the station's propped open with a cinder block, but you can't see inside, just shadows and the blue glow of a TV. You hear a siren in the distance, then another, then silence. You pump $20 exactly, scanning the perimeter every 3 seconds. Your hand's on the door handle before the pump clicks off. And if East St. Louis's 10-minute divide felt stark, the next town's isolation makes distance irrelevant when danger's already inside.
Number 7, Refugio, Texas. Refugio looks like the kind of place where everyone knows your name. The problem? They also know when you leave and who's watching when you're gone. Refugio is a tiny South Texas town with barely 2,700 people. It's surrounded by ranch land, oil fields, and highways that stretch for miles without witnesses. On a map, it looks peaceful. In crime stats, it's anything but. Violent crime rate, approximately 1,520 per 100,000 residents. That's 4 times the national average. In a town of 2,700, that rate means violence isn't rare, it's routine. Property crime, 1 in 22. Median household income, $35,000. Poverty rate, 28%. What drives crime in a town this small? Drugs, mostly. Refugio sits near several known trafficking routes between the Gulf Coast and inland Texas. Meth and heroin flow through here like crude oil through pipelines. A local business owner posted this, paraphrased from a regional news comment section. Refugio used to be the kind of place you didn't lock your doors. Now you lock them twice and sleep with one eye open. The Refugio Police Department operates with a skeleton crew, fewer than 10 officers covering the entire town and surrounding county areas. That means response times stretch, patrols are sparse, and residents know they're mostly on their own. Let's talk isolation for a second. Refugio is surrounded by nothing. Miles of flat land, empty highways, and the kind of quiet that makes you paranoid. If something happens, there's no crowd to blend into, no neighbor to hear you scream, no traffic to slow down a getaway. Isolation doesn't just breed crime, it protects it. And unlike East St. Louis, where help is theoretically 10 minutes away across the river, in Refugio, help is 45 minutes away and might not come at all. Also, can we address the gas station situation? Refugio has 3. One closes at 7 p.m., another is cash only after dark because they've had the card reader ripped out twice. The third technically stays open 24 hours, but the owner lives in the back and operates through a pass-through window after 9 p.m. like a drive-through confessional booth. You don't make eye contact, you slide your card through, you pray it goes through, you leave. Late evening on Highway 77, your tank's on empty. You see a gas station ahead, single building, fluorescent lights buzzing, one car parked off to the side that looks like it hasn't moved in days. You pull up, the door's propped open with a brick, no cashier in sight, a handwritten sign taped to the pump, prepay inside after 8 p.m. You glance around, nothing but darkness and distance. You decide to risk it on fumes and keep driving. If Refugio's isolation amplifies danger, the next town's density compresses it into something that looks like a theme park gone wrong. Number 6, Opa-locka, Florida. Opa-locka was designed to look like something out of Arabian Nights. Instead, it became a case study in urban nightmares. Opa-locka is a small city just north of Miami with around 16,000 residents packed into 4.2 square miles. It was founded in the 1920s as a themed resort town with Arabian-inspired architecture, minarets, domes, street names like Alibaba Avenue and Sesame Street. It's kitschy, it's colorful, and it's one of the most dangerous places in Florida. Violent crime rate, 1,913 per 100,000. That's 5 times the national average. Your chance of being a victim of violent crime, 1 in 52. Median household income, $27,000. Poverty rate, 37%. The city's been called the crime capital of Florida by multiple news outlets, and Opa-locka earned that title the hard way. In 2019, FBI agents raided multiple locations in Opa-locka as part of Operation Triple Beam, a massive crackdown on gang violence that resulted in 35 arrests, including several city employees allegedly tied to criminal enterprises. The operation revealed that some gang members had infiltrated city government positions to protect drug operations. When your municipal workers are on a federal indictment, you're not just dealing with crime, you're dealing with systemic rot. Here's a quote pulled from a local online forum, paraphrased. Opa-locka looks like Disneyland designed by someone who gave up halfway through. That's the vibe. Beautiful bones, broken execution. Opa-locka's government has been a revolving door of corruption, scandal, and incompetence for decades. Multiple city managers have been fired or resigned under investigation. In 2021, the city was nearly dissolved by the state due to financial mismanagement. Can we talk about the architecture for a second? Opa-locka is genuinely beautiful in a surreal, fever dream kind of way. Pastel buildings with ornate detailing, domed roofs, archways that look like movie sets, but half of them are crumbling, tagged with graffiti or boarded up. It's like walking through a theme park that got abandoned mid-construction and repurposed as a crime scene. There's one building, I kid you not, that has a gorgeous turquoise minaret on top and a payday loan shop at street level with bars so thick they could stop a tank. That's the Opa-locka aesthetic. Fantasy architecture meets fortress mentality. You're stopped at a light on Opa-locka Boulevard. The car next to you has no plates. The building on your right is a gorgeous Moroccan-style structure with bars on the windows and bullet holes in the stucco. Ahead, a police cruiser idles in a parking lot, lights on, but the officer's on his phone. The light turns green. You don't wait for the car behind you to go, you gun it. And remember how Refugio had 3 sketchy gas stations? Opa-locka has 12, and all of them look like they're auditioning for a heist movie. One has a sign that says, "Smile, you're on camera," with 17 visible cameras pointing in every direction, including one aimed at the sky. What are they expecting? Drone robberies? 5. Bastrop, Louisiana. Bastrop is the kind of town where even the locals tell you to fill up before you get there. Bastrop sits in Morehouse Parish in northeastern Louisiana with a population just under 10,000. It's a parish seat, meaning it's supposed to be a hub, but it functions more like a last stop before the middle of nowhere. Violent crime rate, 1,927 per 100,000. That's more than 5 times the national average. Your odds of being a victim of violent crime? 1 in 52. Median household income, $21,000. Poverty rate, 42%. Bastrop's violence isn't random. It's rooted in decades of economic collapse. The paper mill that used to employ half the town shut down. The jobs left. The people who could afford to leave left. What stayed behind was poverty, drugs, and desperation. A local pastor was quoted in a regional news piece, paraphrased here. "People don't leave Bastrop because they love it. They leave because they can. The rest of us? We're stuck praying for change." Here's what nobody talks about. Bastrop's government has been plagued by corruption scandals for years. Embezzlement, misuse of funds, nepotism, and good old-fashioned graft. Can we talk about infrastructure? Bastrop's roads look like they were paved during the Civil War and then forgotten. Streetlights flicker or don't work at all. The courthouse, the literal center of the parish, has windows that leak and a roof that's been under repair for half a decade. Also, there's a bridge on Highway 165 that's been structurally deficient since 2016. The state keeps putting up "drive carefully" signs instead of, fixing it. Bold strategy. Driving through Bastrop at dusk. The sun setting behind the trees. The streets are mostly empty, not peaceful empty, abandoned empty. You pass a gas station. The sign says open, but the lot's dark and there's a chain across the air pump. You see one car parked near the door, engine running, driver inside scrolling their phone. You slow down, consider stopping. Then you remember the stats. You keep driving. If Bastrop feels forgotten by the state, the next town was forgotten by everyone, including the people who live next door. Number 4. Benton Harbor, Michigan. Benton Harbor is separated from its wealthy neighbor by a river, a highway, and an economic chasm so wide it's practically a canyon. Benton Harbor sits on the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, with a population around 9,000. Right across the river is St. Joseph, a picturesque lakefront town with beaches, boutiques, and median incomes over $60,000. Benton Harbor, median income $18,000. Poverty rate 47%. Violent crime rate 1,733 per 100,000. Your chance of being a victim of violent crime in Benton Harbor? 1 in 58. Shootings, stabbings, carjackings. Benton Harbor has it all despite being smaller than most suburban neighborhoods. A resident posted this on a community forum, paraphrased. "Living in Benton Harbor is like being on a sinking ship while the people on the next dock over sip champagne and wave. Emotionally, living here is demoralizing. You can see St. Joseph from Benton Harbor. You can watch tourists stroll the beaches. Families shop in clean stores. Couples dine in waterfront restaurants. And then you go home to boarded up houses, cracked sidewalks, and streets where gunshots echo after dark. Benton Harbor's government has been a disaster for decades. Corruption, mismanagement, and emergency state takeovers stripped local control. The water crisis in 2018 revealed lead levels even higher than Flint and got a fraction of the media attention. Can we talk about the contrast for a second? You can stand on the beach in St. Joseph, look across the water, and see Benton Harbor. Same lake, same state, same country, but cross that river and it's a different world. One side has farmers markets and art galleries. The other has liquor stores with bulletproof glass and gas stations that close before sunset. I watched a St. Joseph resident fill up her Tesla at a charging station while literally looking across the river at Benton Harbor, where the nearest gas station requires prepayment through a rotating drawer. That's America in one frame. Late afternoon. Your GPS routes you off I-94 into Benton Harbor for gas. The exit's lined with empty buildings, faded signs, and graffiti that hasn't been painted over in years. You pull into a station. The pumps are old, half of them covered with out-of-order bags. You look around. No one's outside, but you feel watched. You prepay, pump fast, and get back on the highway. And if Benton Harbor's proximity to wealth highlighted its poverty, the next town's isolation makes its collapse nearly invisible. Number 3. Williamson, West Virginia. Williamson is where Appalachia's drug crisis, economic collapse, and generational trauma collided and never stopped colliding. Williamson sits deep in Mingo County along the Tug Fork River with a population just under 2,800. It's surrounded by mountains, coal seams, and memories of a time when mining jobs paid enough to raise families. That time ended decades ago. What's left is a hollowed-out town with a violent crime rate of 1,842 per 100,000, nearly 5 times the national average. Your chance of being a victim of violent crime in Williamson, 1 in 54. Median household income, $23,000. Poverty rate, 34%. Here's the thing about Williamson. It's not gang violence. It's not cartel activity. It's desperation weaponized. The opioid epidemic hit Appalachia harder than almost anywhere else in America, and Williamson was ground zero. Remember the name Jim and Randy Woolley? These two brothers were local doctors in Williamson who, between 2015 and 2017, prescribed over 17 million opioid pills to a town of fewer than 3,000 people. 17 million pills in 2 years. The DEA called it the worst pill mill operation in American history. Both brothers were eventually arrested, but by then, the damage was done. Addiction rates in Williamson skyrocketed. Overdoses became routine, and the violence that follows addiction took root. The town never recovered. A local healthcare worker once said in an interview, paraphrased here, "We've got more overdoses than car accidents, more deaths from drugs than old age. This town's not dying, it's being killed." Williamson's police force operates with a handful of officers covering the entire town. They're overwhelmed, underfunded, and battling a crisis no small town department is equipped to handle. Let's talk geography for a second. Williamson is isolated. You're boxed in by mountains, cut off from major highways, and miles from anything resembling economic opportunity. The nearest city is Charleston, 2 hours north through winding roads. If you need specialized medical care, legal help, or just want to escape for a day, you're driving. And if something happens, if someone breaks into your house, if there's an overdose, if violence erupts, help is far, far away. Remember how Benton Harbor could see wealth across the river? Williamson can't see anything except mountains and more mountains. It's isolation as geography and poverty as destiny. Also, Williamson has this beautiful historic downtown with buildings from the coal boom era. Gorgeous brick facades, ornate windows, the works. Except half of them are empty and the other half are dollar stores, vape shops, and bail bondsmen. One building has a sign that says antiques, but the window's covered in plywood. Another says coming soon, coffee shop, with a date from 2019. It's 2024, nothing came. Driving through Williamson at night. The streetlights are sparse. Half the storefronts are dark, boarded up, or burned out. You pass a gas station, single pump, handwritten cash only sign taped to the window. The building's painted bright yellow, but the paint's peeling. There's one car in the lot, engine running, headlights on. You consider stopping. Then you see a shadow move near the tree line. You don't stop. And if Williamson's mountains trapped its problems inside, the next town's flat delta landscape couldn't hide them at all. Number 2. Helena-West Helena, Arkansas. Helena-West Helena is what happens when two struggling towns merge and discover they've just doubled their problems. Helena-West Helena sits in the Arkansas Delta along the Mississippi River, with a population around 10,000. It was formed in 2006 when the cities of Helena and West Helena merged in a last-ditch effort to consolidate resources. Spoiler, it didn't work. Violent crime rate, 2,204 per 100,000. That's nearly 6 times the national national average. Your odds of being a victim of violent crime? 1 in 45. Median household income? $22,000. Poverty rate? 40%. Helena-West Helena's violence includes everything: shootings, stabbings, armed robberies, aggravated assaults. The town has one of the highest murder rates per capita in the entire country. In some years, the homicide rate rivals cities 10 times its size. In October 2022, Helena-West Helena made national news when a shooting at a local Halloween event left 2 dead and 11 injured, including 3 children. The shooter was allegedly targeting a rival gang member, but opened fire into a crowd of families. The incident forced the city to cancel all public events for the following year. When a town can't safely hold a Halloween carnival, you're not dealing with a crime problem, you're dealing with a war zone. A local pastor was quoted in a regional news story, paraphrased, "This town lost hope before it lost people. Now, we're just burying both." The city's government has been plagued by mismanagement for years. Multiple officials have faced corruption charges. The police department operates with fewer than 20 officers covering the entire town, meaning response times are slow, patrols are rare, and residents are largely on their own. Can we talk about downtown for a second? Helena-West Helena has a historic district that looks like it was frozen in 1952 and then abandoned. Beautiful old buildings with ornate facades, most of them empty, boarded up, or collapsing. There's a blues museum because this is Delta country, but it's surrounded by decay. You can walk past history and crime scenes on the same block. Also, the town has this magnificent old train depot that's been under renovation since 2011. There's a construction fence around it, but I'm pretty sure the construction company went out of business in 2014 and nobody bothered to take the fence down. It's like a monument to abandoned plans. Dusk on Highway 49. The road cuts through the center of town, past shuttered storefronts, empty lots, and houses with bars on every window. You see a gas station ahead. The lights are on, but the parking lot's empty except for one truck with its engine idling. You slow down. Your tank's at a quarter. You glance at the GPS. Next station is 18 miles. You make a choice. You keep driving. Remember back in Williamson how isolation made help feel far away? In Helena-West Helena, help isn't far, it's just not coming. The police are here, but there aren't enough of them. The hospital exists, but it's underfunded. The government functions, but barely. It's not geographic isolation, it's systemic abandonment. Number 1. North St. Louis, Missouri. North St. Louis. Wait, St. Louis isn't a small town. You're right, but the North Side is functionally a collection of small, forgotten municipalities that operate like independent towns trapped inside a larger city's shadow. And statistically, they're the most dangerous places on this list. North St. Louis is divided into dozens of tiny municipalities, places like Wellston, Pagedale, Jennings, Delwood, most with populations under 5,000. Technically separate cities with their own mayors, police departments, and tax structures. In practice, they're fragmented, under-resourced, and some of the most violent communities in America. Let's look at Wellston as an example. Population, 2,100. Violent crime rate, over 3,000 per 100,000. That's 8 times the national average. Your chance of being a victim of violent crime? 1 in 33. Median income, $23,000. Poverty rate, 38%. Or take Pagedale. Population, 3,100. Crime rate, similarly astronomical. The town's so small, it doesn't have a full-time police force. It contracts officers from neighboring towns. Why is North St. Louis so dangerous? Fragmentation. These tiny municipalities can't afford proper police forces, fire departments, or public services. They survive on traffic tickets and fines, literal taxation through citation. Some towns get more than half their revenue from fines. Here's what locals say, paraphrased from community forums. North St. Louis isn't one place. It's 30 places all falling apart separately. Nobody's helping because nobody knows who to help. Living here means navigating a patchwork of jurisdictions, each with different laws, different police, different levels of dysfunction. You can drive 3 blocks and cross into a different city with a different crime rate. Let's talk gas stations one last time. In North St. Louis, gas stations operate like fortresses. Bulletproof glass, no public restrooms, prepay only. Some have signs that say, "No loitering, police will be called." Others just have cameras. Lots of cameras. You don't chat with the attendant. You don't make eye contact with anyone in the lot. You get in, get gas, get out. And unlike Helena-West Helena, where you had 18 miles to the next station, here you've got options. You just don't want any of them. Late night in Wellston. The streets are dark. Half the streetlights are out. You pass block after block of boarded up houses, empty lots, and chain link fences. You see a gas station ahead, lights flickering. There are 3 cars in the lot, all idling, no one outside. You pull up to a pump. Before you even turn off the engine, you notice a guy watching from across the street. He's not walking, just watching. You fill up fast, eyes on the mirrors. You're gone before the receipt prints. And here's the cruelest irony. Remember way back at number 10 when we talked about Bessemer's $12 generals? North St. Louis has towns so small and so broke, they can't even attract a Dollar General. When discount stores won't invest in your economy, you're not just poor, you're economically invisible. 10 small towns where locals warn you not to stop for gas. These aren't random crime spikes. They're decades of economic collapse and policy failures turned into survival zones. Danger in America doesn't always look dangerous. It looks like a quiet town with a gas station behind bulletproof glass. Places you drive through and never think twice about until you check the stats. If this video made you rethink your next road trip, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into places most rankings ignore. Stay safe out there. Sometimes the best decision is the one where you just keep driving.